Hi guys, coming to you from in bed, obviously, on day 1 of my period. Pain isn't too bad yet. I've got my essentials, my cramp cream, my little cuterus heating pack, and I'm wearing some period underwear. I just am planning on to be living here for the next few days. But it's Endometriosis Awareness Month, and I figured what better time than now to talk about endometriosis. So we're gonna do a two-parter. The first part is I asked you guys some questions, what you would want to see talked about if you could sit down with your favorite endometriosis creator and ask them anything. And I got so many responses. So we're going to dive into that today. In the second part, come back for part 2, I'm going to talk about my endometriosis journey, specifically go into all of the details about how I got diagnosed, my first surgery, the surgery I have coming up, my symptoms, how I manage with all of this random stuff, and give you guys basically the lay down and all of my tips and tricks. So grab your favorite comfort item, get cozy in bed, and let's talk about endometriosis together. You guys had so many good questions ranging from just what are the common symptoms to how to fight gaslighting, relationships, and endo. So we're gonna cover all of your guys' questions today. So I'm literally just going to be reading exactly what you guys wrote and answering them and then adding my own little stuff in between. We're gonna start off light. Do I take any supplements to help with my symptoms? Yes. Yes. I guess there's not a question mark, it's a yes. I take CBD. I have it right here. Pure Spectrum CBD gummies. And these I take kind of every day just as like a maintenance type pain management tool. But I will also take extra when I'm having a flare-up, especially when I'm on my period. Every day, I also take inositol, and it's a capsule. It's more so for PCOS to help with cycle regularity, but with cycle regularity, for me personally at least, comes a little bit better management and being able to time my cycles in my schedule. And this one isn't really a supplement, but I use CBD suppositories as well. These go up and in, and these are really, really helpful too. So I love CBD, and we'll get into other pain management stuff as we get more into the questions. How do you know when it's time to seek a diagnosis? Well, I always say if your pain and symptoms are interfering with your everyday activities, like if you are on your period and you can't still go work, or you still can't function, you can't get up, you can't do things by yourself, then that is a red flag. Your period or normal period pain and symptoms should not interfere with your everyday functioning. Also, if you're having pain outside of your period, that is another red flag. How do you know if it's endo or PCOS? And then another question said, how do you know when it's time to seek additional diagnoses? How do you know when it might not just be endo? So those two kind of go together, because there are a lot of reproductive diseases that can kind of overlap and mimic each other. Personally, I have both PCOS and endo, so it's actually kind of hard to tell what is what. My cycle irregularity, I think, is from PCOS, and I have more of the hormonal or metabolic symptoms from PCOS, and then I attribute most of my pain to endo. However, PCOS can cause cystic ovaries, and endometriosis can also give you endometriomas. And I have a history of cysts, whether they're endometriomas or regular cysts. It's hard to tell unless you get every single one biopsied and sent to pathology. My first endo surgery, they were small cysts that we thought were probably due to PCOS, but then the pathology came back that there was endometriosis in them, so they were endometriomas. I just had an MRI a little bit ago that showed a giant cyst on my ovary, and they think it's an endometrioma, but we won't know. I've also had cysts burst, and so that could have just been regular cysts. So it really is hard to tell, especially with seeking additional diagnoses. I think a lot of the times trusting your gut, and if you think that there are things happening inside of your body that can't be explained very well by just the one diagnosis, then it's fair to seek additional diagnoses, testing, or opinions. When there's just things that can't be fully explained by the one diagnosis, I think it's reasonable to ask for additional testing and evaluation. And a good way to bring this up to your doctor is asking about differential diagnoses. And that is kind of a key word that you can use to help them feel a little bit more inclined to do further testing. How do you start the diagnosis process? So from my experience, I started by telling my OBGYN about my pain. And from there, he was like, oh, okay, we can just do diagnostic laparoscopy and I can just get rid of the endo if I find any. And at the time, I was like, cool, that sounds good, because I didn't know any different. But now I know that there are specialists for endometriosis who do excision surgery, and excision surgery is considered the gold standard for treating endo, because think of it like a weed. If endometriosis is like a weed, if there's a weed growing, right, that's the endo. If you burn it, which is what endometriosis ablation is, if you burn it, you're burning the top of it like you would burn a weed out in the grass. The roots are still in the ground, but if you excise it, if you rip it out, the roots aren't there anymore. If you leave the roots, you leave the opportunity for it to grow back in that spot. And if you excise it, then you're getting rid of the potential for it to grow back. Not to say that it can't, but it's a lot less likely for it to grow back in that same spot, or to grow back as quickly. So I went through my first surgery and I had an ablation, and it wasn't very helpful because, again, my endometriosis just grew back, and my surgeon wasn't an expert. He was just a regular OBGYN, and he missed a lot of endo. He, in my post-op report, said that I just had a little bit of black endo on the right side, but then I had unrelated massive adhesions along my large intestine. And that's because he thought that endo was only black. He didn't realize that endo can look a lot of different ways. I was misstaged, and he didn't get rid of all the endo. So if I were to redo my entire diagnostic journey, I would bring up my symptoms with my OBGYN, and I would explain my concerns and talk about the possibility of having endometriosis. And then I would ask if they have any recommendations and can refer me to an excision specialist. And if they do, then I would take the names, I would get a referral, and I would consult with at least 2 different surgeons, because every surgeon is going to have a different approach and different things that they prefer or like to do a certain way. And I think at the end of the day, it comes down to whatever you feel the most comfortable with and whoever your gut kind of just trusts the most. Along with this question, they said, it feels like my options are nothing or hysterectomy, no in between. So this is a myth, which also ties into another question saying, what are the biggest myths we need to be ready to fight when we go into the doctor's office? Hysterectomies do not cure endometriosis, because endometriosis is growths of similar lining to what lines the uterus. It's not the same type of tissue, but it's similar to that lining growing outside of the uterus. So basically on other organs. It can grow on the surface of the outside of the uterus. It's not inside the uterus, but otherwise it mostly grows on fallopian tubes, ovaries, just your abdominal wall, your pelvic floor, bowels, bladder. Endo has been found in basically every single major organ in the body. So it can really be anywhere, which is why a hysterectomy doesn't cure it, because it actually isn't a uterus or period specific disease. It's a chronic inflammatory disease. It can affect so many parts of your body. And I remember there's another question on here that says, why does my entire body hurt? It's the whole thing. That's because it's a chronic inflammatory disease. It's not uterus or period specific, so it can affect so many parts of your body. So for sure, excision is the gold standard for treating endometriosis, and that's because you're taking out the lesions and reducing the likelihood for it to grow back in that specific spot. Obviously, it can grow back. There is no cure for endo. So a lot of people end up needing to get a second excision at some point in their life. It's also not something that stops with a hysterectomy. The growth can still continue if you get a hysterectomy, and after menopause, you can still have effects and pain from endo. For some people, hormones are helpful, like birth control, and for some people, it isn't helpful. For me, it was not helpful. It made my pain worse, and it made the mental side effects a lot worse. But I know that there's a lot of people where they were started on a birth control and it's helped them a lot. There's conflicting research on whether or not progesterone, birth control, and hormones are a suppressant of endometriosis, and it's conflicting because some say that progesterone can suppress the growth of endo, and some say that that is not true, and it doesn't. The opinion will change depending on which doctor you talk to. Some doctors I've consulted with say that from their personal experience, they have seen progesterone hormones literally get rid of and shrink people's endo, and then others agree with some of the research that it doesn't do that. So I think going based off of how you feel is honestly the biggest thing. Like for me, it did not feel good. It made me feel worse. It made my pain worse. It made me bleed. I'm not someone who benefits from birth control, but I have a close friend who's been on birth control for years because it helps so much with her endo pain. What do I do when all of my imaging is negative but the pain is unbearable? You find an excision surgeon, because imaging is not reliable or definitive for diagnosing endometriosis. The only way to get a definitive diagnosis of endometriosis is through surgery. Imaging can be helpful in aiding a diagnosis, but it cannot give you a diagnosis. Majority of people will not have endometriosis findings on their imaging. I don't have any findings of endometriosis on any of my imaging, but I still have endometriosis, and it was diagnosed through surgery. So if you ever go to a provider and they order imaging and it comes back normal and negative and they say, oh, you don't have endo, go find somebody else, because that is not true, and that's another myth that you can fight when you go into the doctor's office. Now, when talking about more myths to fight when going into a doctor's office, that's where it gets a little bit tricky. Obviously, there's the usual ones like, oh, your pain is normal, no, your pain isn't normal, stuff like that. But it can get into a little bit gray area of whether it's a true myth or not. Like, birth control can cure endo. That's a myth, but birth control can help endo in some cases, but not others. Another one that I consider a myth is talking about medications like Lupron and Orilissa. Those two medications are classified as GnRH antagonists, and I think that they are not great. They basically put you in medically induced menopause, and they are a very short-term solution because you can't be on them for very long because the side effects on your body are so intense. Orilissa, you can only be on for, I believe, 2 years, and like when it was offered to me years ago, is only 9 months, and that's because your risk of osteoporosis goes way up. Osteoporosis is thinning of your bones, by the way. There's so many other things that go into medically induced menopause, and again, it's only short term. It doesn't mean that once you stop it, your endo can't come back. So sometimes doctors will try and present these medications as like this miracle drug, and I think that is a myth. A lot of them are honest about what it actually entails and does to your body. There are a lot of questions about natural cramp relief, non-traditional remedies, and using other types of pain relief. And so I already mentioned cramp cream. This is probably my go-to, I would say, for cramps. This is by the company Some Days, and it is just a natural cream pain relief, and it is, I'm not even kidding, magic. I use it literally all the time. I even use it for like non-period pain cramps. I'm not sure what ingredient is in it to make it so magical, but I carry it in my bag with me. I have multiple bottles around my house. I have travel sizes, and it has been kind of a game changer for managing my cramps and my pain. Sometimes when I'm out and about and I start to get cramps, the second I put it on, I feel some relief. I also already mentioned the CBD, but I also have topical CBD. It's from the same company, Pure Spectrum, and it's like a hard salve, which is super nice too. I mentioned the suppositories as well. I have 2 favorite brands. A Lot of Heat. This is like one of those microwavable rice packs, but Myobi, my love. I have like 4 of these, and they're portable heat packs, so you can strap them on like a little belt and turn them on, and it also has a vibration, because some people find that vibration when they're in pain can help kind of distract their nerves or their nervous system from pain. I also have one-time use heat patches that stick onto your clothes. Those are by Spicy. One of my myobes has two like tens kind of pads on them, so you can do tens unit too. Mobility aids is another big one, and I know that's not pain relief, but it's pain management, because if I can rely on a mobility aid to conserve my energy or to support my body, that will in turn also help with my pain. How do you manage working and recommendations on part-time or remote positions? I have multiple jobs and they're all part-time. I obviously do disability advocacy and social media, but I also am a professional photographer, a sign language interpreter, and I work in healthcare. And I guess the biggest thing that supports me in all of the work that I do is most of it is I can pick my own hours and it's flexible. So with photography, I can accept or decline jobs as I need, and it's a little bit more flexible than, say, an office job. With disability advocacy and social media, I can do it a lot from home. With sign language interpreting, I can accept and decline jobs as needed. And it's in the disability space, and so there's a lot of room for kind of solidarity and accessibility needs. So I think having jobs and having sources of income where I'm not just reliant on one thing, but it also has flexibility has been super huge. And I've also found that just kind of harnessing the skills that I already have has been super accessible to me. I feel really lucky because, you know, people say that there's 3 or 4 pillars that you should try to include when you have a career. Something that makes money, something that you're good at, something that you love, and something that gives back to society. And I feel like I kind of hit all those pillars in everything that I do, and so I feel super fulfilled in everything I do, and they're accessible to me as a chronically ill and disabled person. How does it feel being dependent on others? Yeah, I would say I'm mostly dependent on my husband. I'm super grateful to have a partner, and he's the one that provides for us financially the most. Like, he is like the breadwinner for us. And yeah, I feel really guilty sometimes because I can't have a full-time job, or I can't be providing for us in the same way. I could do a whole nother video on feeling dependent, or how being disabled and endometriosis and chronic pain affects my feelings on that, especially with my partner. And I do want to do talking about interable relationships. But yeah, there's just a lot of emotions that go into it all the time, and a big one is guilt. And it's a constant conversation with me and my partner, and me explaining how I feel and how I feel guilty, and a lot of times it is him kind of comforting me and talking me through it. But just remembering that there's other things that I provide to the relationship and to our household that isn't necessarily income or physical labor. I take on a lot of the mental load of things, and there's other ways that I contribute to our relationship and to our home. Oh, this is heavy. How to not let the fact that you can't afford surgery and medication take over your mental well-being. Yeah, that is a really big one. Insurance and the medical system is really fucked up. And I think just the fact that that's even like something that people face is really horrible. And a lot of people don't have access to excision surgeons or proper healthcare for endometriosis. It's so valid that it would take over your mental well-being. Like, I know that this person is looking for kind of advice on how to not let it take it over, but it, like, the physical to mental health pipeline, they're so interconnected. Like, if your physical health is not good, if you physically don't feel well or safe in your body, that's going to take over your mental health. And honestly, I guess I don't really have any advice other than finding support and finding other ways to take care of yourself. Like, maybe using things like a cream is what you need to do. So yeah, I don't really, I guess, have any other advice on that other than just to say, like, I'm sorry, and I empathize, and I hate that that's even something that is a barrier to healthcare, and you're not alone. There's a lot of other people that are facing that too. Kind of on that note, how do you find community in real life? I found community in real life through community online, basically. I found kind of endo people in the community online, and then kind of just one by one started finding people that were in my area or near me, and went out on a limb and messaged them, or set up a community event and invited people and put it out online, and then waited to see who showed up. I think a lot of people get nervous about messaging or inviting someone out that they haven't met before, but reality is that a lot of us need that community, especially in person, and are probably also wanting to do the same but are too scared. So the worst that can happen is that they say no and they turn you down, and then there you go, there's your answer, and you move on. But the best that can happen is that they say yes, and then you find community. What is the frequency of imaging and testing that you can do to see if your endo is back? Same with excision. Honestly, I think that is a question for like you personally with your doctor, because everybody's case is going to be different. Again, that's assuming that your endo shows up on imaging. A lot of people's endo does not show up on imaging, so using imaging to monitor it would not be very helpful. As far as doing surgery, again, I think it depends on your symptoms. Like if you feel like your symptoms have come back or things are getting worse, it's very reasonable to bring it back up to your doctor and ask if that is something that you could explore again. Does it ever get better? I'm so stuck in a loop of pain. I think it's not linear. I think it can get better. I think it can get worse. I think it can stay the same. And that doesn't just apply to recovery or healing. I think that applies to chronic pain in life. I would say that right now, health-wise, I'm doing better than I was a few years ago, but I'm also dependent on a lot more aids than I was back then. I also have more medical devices than I do back then. So I think it's just non-comparable and it's non-linear. And finding the things that help you and the treatments that provide you a better quality of life is really important. Advice on getting used to using mobility aids more and trying to get others to understand. Yeah, this is a big one that I struggled with, and specifically imposter syndrome with using mobility aids, because I feel like I would go out and I'd be using it and I would just have in my brain that everyone that looks at me thinks that I am too healthy or too young or too whatever to be using this aid. And honestly, so what if people are thinking that? Like, I know that sounds like so much easier said than done, but like, so what? What if I am too young? What if I am healthy? Like, who cares? If it's helping you, then that's what matters. And I think that's when it really started to turn for me, is like, it's helping me participate. It's helping me leave the house. It's helping me do X, Y, and Z. So why do I care if this random person that I pass on the street looks at me for an extra second? I am not someone who feels very comfortable talking about my health issues with my family or people close to me. Yet, if it makes me feel better while I'm doing it, then that's what matters. What are the symptoms that led me to a diagnosis, and what's the criteria for a diagnosis? The criteria is that you have endometriosis diagnosed through pathology from a surgery. That's basically it. So you have to have surgery to be definitively diagnosed. The symptoms that led me to a diagnosis were mainly just heavy, unbearable periods is kind of what I started experiencing from my very first period. I guess heavy, irregular, unbearable periods. And then since then, I've learned that a lot of my other symptoms were from endo too. Like my month-long pelvic pain is also from endo. Endo pain is not just on your period. How do you deal with pre-surgery anxiety? That is what I'm currently dealing with now, because I am exactly 1 month away from my next endo excision, and I am having a lot of pre-surgery anxiety. So I just try to remind myself that it's going to be worth it in the end. It's not going to be easy at first, but it's going to be worth it in the end. And it's okay to acknowledge that it's going to be hard, the recovery is going to be tough, all those things, because that's real life, that's reality. And to avoid that and not face that is not going to make it easier to process or prepare yourself. So yeah, it's gonna be hard. It's going to be tough at first, but I have a good support system and it's going to be worth it in the end. I'm going to feel better. Something that has really helped me with previous surgeries is to kind of record, either through actual like film or journaling, writing it down, or photos. Record the moments where I am miserable. Record when I am experiencing pain and symptoms. So then I can remind myself when I'm doubting why I'm choosing to do this, that I'm miserable now and that I don't have to keep living this way. Favorite brand for mobility aids? Fashionable Canes is my favorite cane brand because they're fashionable. It's in the name. And I have a custom wheelchair and it is a tie light. And for a rollator, I just got one off of Amazon. Doesn't have to be fancy. How do you manage after endo recovery? Honestly, initial recovery is tough. It's gonna hurt, but it's going to get better. You're going to look back and be glad that you did it. Also, again, it's not linear, so reminding yourself that you're going to have good days and bad days. And soaking in those good days, remembering that there are going to be more good days. So yeah, that was your guys' questions. I feel like we covered so many good things, and looking at the time, this video is going to be so long, but it's good. It's a good conversation, and these are things that need to be talked about, and these are questions that so many people have, and we need this information to be accessible and easy to find so that people know what they're getting into, what to look for, all of that good stuff. So thanks so much for asking questions. And I hope this was helpful, and come back for part 2 on my personal endo diagnosis journey.